Hey, look at that. About a year has passed since my Incredibles video essay, and my last upload. Time sure flies, doesn't it? Perhaps some explanation is in order. Later. For now, let me just say that this right here, what you're watching, is not what took so long. I just wanted to, muse on certain aspects of The Incredibles that I didn't have time for, and various related subjects to that video. I figured this would be a good chance to fill in the gaps, so to speak, between now and my real video. Granted, I realize that at a little over 190 subscribers, I'm no choo-choo TV nursery rhymes and kids songs, but I do know I have at least a handful of loyal viewers who look forward to my uploads, and it is for these people, mainly, that I'm making this. At all events, Incredibles is a great fucking movie, man. Just my opinion, no need to cancel me for it. And I had a lot of fun making that video. As I said back then, I wanted to make an Incredibles video for quite some time. And, having at last finished the arduous task of drafting my novel, my life's work, if you will, it was a really refreshing change of pace.
I'm a writer, you monsters! I create for a living! I'm a creator! I am a creator! This is my uniform! This is how I serve the common man! This is where I go!
Now, what exactly was left unsaid in the original video? Well, I'll tell you honestly, not much. I'd said practically everything then. But this video will cover a few things about the movie itself, and as well as broader topics, such as villains. There's no particular theme or underlying structure to this video, so I'm just gonna go through the various points bulletin point style. In case you couldn't tell, I got sort of a thing for villains. I don't think I'm exactly alone when I say, villains are just fucking cool, man, right? As far back as when I was a wee lad, the bad guys were always much cooler to me than the good guys. It was a pet peeve of mine whenever a show or movie gave the cooler designs to the heroes over the villains. Like, come on. It's common fucking knowledge that villains must, by default, have the coolest designs. I've sometimes thought about why some of us seem to have just, always gravitated more naturally towards villains than others. Perhaps it's by virtue of their being a threat and thus necessarily intimidating, in theory that is. Regardless, my fascination with them has persisted to this day. In general, to be honest, I just really like good drama. I like stories that just push their cast to the boundaries of their mental and emotional resilience, that hold a mirror to a character's face and force them to acknowledge the horrible truth in what they see. And I suppose villains just personify that. They are literally a character who embodies drama. Which, when you think about it, is an interesting and really kind of bizarre concept when you dwell upon it. I mean, a character who exists to create conflict. Although they don't necessarily create conflict per se, not out of thin air at any rate. Ideally, in my opinion, an effective villain, or antagonist, whatever the case, should facilitate and draw out a conflict that was already there. Whatever inner hardship a character faces, whatever troubles or burdens them in life, a villain can bring it to the fore, heighten and sharpen it, and push it to its logical conclusion. There's a reason I stress the dynamic so much in my videos, because that's precisely what it is, a dynamic. Neither the hero nor villain exist in a vacuum. The relationship is defined by their interplay. You might call their relationship dialectical. In my Hunchback in Notre Dame video, I spoke of several attributes that I believed made Frollo a strong villain. That he, quote, challenged the protagonist, made him question himself and his abilities, etc.
Rubbish! Those were lies! All lies!
Not really, but it isn't the full truth either. So your villain makes your protagonist have a mental breakdown or something. So what? That mental breakdown isn't tied to some previously established struggle or conflict in the protagonist's life. Its emotional impact in the narrative is diminished substantially. In my opinion. And that is why I push back quite heavily against the popularly conceived virtues of good villains, against the morally gray, the complex and three-dimensional, etc. The extent that any one attribute constitutes a, quote, good villain can, in my opinion, only be measured in relation to the protagonist/main cast and the broader narrative, as I stressed repeatedly in the original video. All that said, You'd think from the way I glazed Syndrome so much in my Incredibles video that he was like my all-time favorite villain or something. Can I be honest with you? Syndrome is, I don't know, he's alright. Yeah, quick edit here. I don't know why I said this. Like, yeah, he actually is one of my favorite villains. I don't know what the fuck this, yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd call him one of my favorites. He's up there. Like, yes, he is. The fuck? What are you talking about? I mean, I agree with all the other, like, stuff that I'm about to say, but the fuck? Why did I say this? Continuing. Well, by every measure, he is, for the reasons outlined, a great villain. He represents everything that Mr. Incredible is unable or unwilling to face in himself. He's egocentric, places his own needs above others. Like Mr. Incredible, he's obsessed with the past, preoccupied with glory and recognition, yet without the veil of altruism and selflessness that Bob deceives himself with. Simultaneously, as I elaborated in that video, he's a direct consequence of Mr. Incredible's idealized past, a side that Bob hasn't interfaced with. Though crucially, the parallels between the two aren't simply poetic. They're a vehicle for Bob's own confrontation with himself, and the obstacles he must overcome in his life to mend his unstable family relations. But here's the thing. He's just not very cool, you know? He lacks that degree of badass factor that I personally look for in my villains. I mean, I don't know, he's just got this stupid punchable face, you know? This fucking lame yee-ass haircut. Like, come on, dog, I can't take this motherfucker seriously. Sorry, but some coolness factor is important to me in villains. Don't get me wrong, I love the silly, the goofy, dorky villains, alright, but even still, I think even those villains can have an intimidating or cool element, you know. I'm not going to list examples, but I will display them on screen once I've thought of them later. This is also why the Disney version of Judge Claude Frollo is still probably my favorite iteration of the character. Although the book and 1939 film versions are objectively more three-dimensional and human and complex, Disney's Frollo just has that badass side that I fucking live for. Like, come on, dog. The aura this man exudes is ridiculous. Bro just has so much fucking sauce, man.
Have mercy, my lord.
I'm placing you and your family under house arrest until I get to the bottom of this. If what you say is true and you're innocent, then you have nothing to fear.
But we are innocent. I assure you, we know nothing of these gypsies.
Like, fuck, dude, he's so fucking cool. He makes me want to merge without looking. But in all, I want to stress that villains can ultimately still work whether they meet all the criterion I've discussed. You shouldn't take these as a checklist that a villain must fulfill. Rather, more or less what I've observed and I suppose what I've been taught. For example, Doc Ock in Spider-Man 2 doesn't really bear that much relation to Peter Parker or his internal struggle. In fact, he often feels more detached from the narrative and more like an appendage to create conflict and the obligatory action scenes. However, he does this so effectively, his character and dialogue are so well written, and he makes for such a compelling adversary that, despite his lack of or loose thematic connection, he's still ultimately a good villain in my book. The things I talk and muse about aren't hard rules written in stone, only general guidelines and factors to ponder. And sometimes a villain just is good, you can't really explain why exactly. I don't know, you just like them and think they're cool. Look at that, I've discovered what an opinion is. Apparently things can be subjective sometimes, though in my opinion, I disagree. Although implied throughout that video, seeing as much of my analysis and commentary centers on dialogue, I never quite put words to it. So yeah, Incredible's dialogue is pretty damn good. It really can't be overemphasized how big a deal well-written dialogue is, at least for me. For anyone who's written anything ever, you know perfectly well that writing good dialogue is hard as fuck. But for the average viewer, it may not seem so. After all, we talk and conversate with people regularly. So I've heard. You know, just write that. Write what we and others say in real life. You know, what could be so hard about... Hold your horses. Not quite. Good dialogue isn't simply about being realistic. If dialogue was written truly realistically, do you know how boring it'd be? Jesus, did you ever once consider that? You know, if characters just had these lengthy, aimless conversations about shit nobody cares about for minutes at a time, if they constantly forgot what they were trying to say, stuttered, accidentally talked over one another, paused at random moments. You know, a character will only stutter, talk over each other, or pause randomly when one of those things is relevant in some way. I.e., a character's nervous, a character's upset, etc. But even there's still a rhythm. There's a need to be succinct. I'm keeping that in. Jesus. And keep the dialogue on track to arrive at the point. Hell, a lot of the time, dialogue itself will be structured much like a narrative, with a setup, creating expectation, rising action, climax, and or resolution, i.e. some expectation has been fulfilled. You see, dialogue isn't a one-to-one recreation of human conversation, rather a representation of it. A streamlined, remastered form, where people seem to say witty, clever, or well-articulated things one would ordinarily only think of long after a conversation has passed. Have you ever just spontaneously dropped a line as hard as a man opens his door and gets shot and you think that of me? No. I am the one who knocks. Mid-argument? If you said yes, I don't believe you. You're a lying sack of shit. You've never said anything clever, funny, or interesting in your entire life. Plus, everybody hates you. It is for this reason that I have a real appreciation for genuinely good dialogue like in The Incredibles. I don't know, there's just something about it that's just so slick, so smart, engaging, and natural. Nothing ever feels heavy-handed or exposition-y. No awkward or clunky phrases. It doesn't feel at all like cartoon dialogue. If you listen to just the audio of the dialogue, you could easily take it for a, quote, real, quote, adult movie with real actors. Because everybody knows that voice actors aren't real people, and cartoons aren't actually painstakingly created by artists and talent. They just spawn out of a factory owned by Disney. But it all relates back to one thing. Conflict. Conflict is an integral part of, well, story and relatedly engaging dialogue. Whether it's friendly banter, bickering, or full-blown arguing, there remains a push-pull. One person is saying A, another countering with B. Perhaps they're both saying A, but conveying completely different moods or levels of interest. Such as the phone dialogue between Bob and Helen in the opening post-prologue, when Helen calls Bob at work to inform him of the apparently highly amusing factoid that their move has now been made official 6 months later by her having unpacked the last box. You know, they say when writing dialogue, especially opening dialogue, don't just write them talking about the weather. And yet The Incredibles balances this tightrope quite a bit. It's fundamentally a mundane and trivial exchange. It exists almost solely to tell the viewer that the family has moved. They also have kids now. Yet it's made engaging through the following factors: Bob's impersonal responses against Helen's enthusiasm, his total lack of interest against her total interest, and her not perceiving this, the fact that this phone call is taking place while Bob is in the middle of denying the claim of a sobbing old woman, and so on. The push-pull in dialogue also serves to highlight and make use of each character's differences, and communicate their unique and defining qualities. Said character differences can be non-antagonistic or antagonistic, depending on the circumstance and their relation to each other. For example, in the prologue, Bob's preoccupation with hero work causing him to be late to his wedding is the subject of light reprimanding, playfully brushed over. But there's no fundamental antagonism or hostility. Only when circumstances change, when supers are made illegal, and Bob's continued preoccupation with hero work is now something of legitimate consequence, as illustrated by the fact this evidently isn't the first time the bars have had to move, it becomes antagonistic. And this, in turn, transforms into arguing. Yes, you might even call it disagreeing. Angrily, in fact. Oh yes, now things are heating up. This is when the water truly becomes the steam, my friends, if you know what I mean. Because when you apply heat to water, it changes into a fundamentally different form, and we call it steam. Yeah. Just wait until you hear what happens when you apply cold. That's right. AIDS. Yeah. Not so fucking funny now, is it? Not everything's a joke, pal. It also creates new antagonisms and contradictions in Bob himself, as he now finds himself in an environment where, unable to be a super anymore, he is suddenly without purpose or an identity. He can't adapt to or accept the present reality, and his mind and attitude remain in the past, at a time before he got hit with AIDS. one last thing I want to mention that gives The Incredibles dialogue its color is how it turns conventional superhero tropes on their head and has extraordinary situations described in quite ordinary language.
Can you see me in this at the supermarket? Come on. I would want to go shopping as Elastigirl, you know what I mean?
I think the opening with the super speaking in an interview exemplifies this. The scene was probably the smartest and cleverest way they could have opened the film with. It really just sets the tone and viewer expectations perfectly.
It always manages to get back in jeopardy again. I mean, sometimes I just want it to stay saved, you know, for a little bit. I feel like the maid. I just cleaned up this mess. Can we keep it clean for 10 minutes?
You get to that point. Wrong way.
Please?
Don't get up there. Not finished.
You know, I thought I had while I was drafting the script for that video. During that whole montage after Bob first fights the Omnidroid, you know, when his life is picking up, he's exercising, spending more time with the fam, you know. In that video, I believe I said that this sequence was a necessary calm before the storm, that Bob finally bonding and spending time with his family before it all unravels was necessary for their perceived death to carry gravity, or something to that effect. I'll be honest. His interpretation was a little contrived. Not that I think it was necessarily wrong. I'm fairly certain that this was at least partly the purpose it was written. However, when I wrote that script and began reflecting on that sequence, I had a completely different interpretation, one that was new to me. Doesn't this sequence kind of undermine some of the main message of the movie? Doesn't this prove that when a person isn't working some miserable, unfulfilling job, when one is able to do work that they like and that they feel pride, dignity, and purpose in, and their material needs are met, that one's well-being, spirits, and personal and family relations improve, that empty, meaningless work that's incompatible with your morals and principles and doesn't allow you to make use of your skills and talents is poison to the human spirit.
I'm not happy, Bob. Not happy.
But I tried not to dwell on this thought. I rationalized an explanation for this sequence that made sense narratively and moved on. I was too far into this script to start having doubts. I mean, one of the core through lines of that script and my broader analysis hinged on, quote, the lie your hero believes, or, as I put it, quote, something a character wrongly attributes the source of their problems to. And yet, here I was, faced with seemingly irrevocable evidence that, no, actually, it seems Bob really is a lot happier and more present for his family doing hero work again. For the film to then go back and say, no, the problem was Bob as an individual not appreciating what he has. It's like, I mean, you're telling me I've poured all this energy and thought into glazing this film now, and over halfway through writing, you suggest I may actually disagree with aspects of this film's message? To tell you truthfully, you know, if Mirage's call to action and invitation to Mr. Incredible hadn't turned out to secretly be part of an evil plan, and were it not a ruse meant to lure him toward his eventual undoing, and if it had remained this dream job, I literally don't actually see anything wrong with Bob taking the job. I obviously think he needed to be honest and tell his wife and family what's up, but otherwise it's like, it only works because this island base here is actually evil. Although I suppose it wouldn't have taken any genius to figure that out, quite frankly. Of course, to suggest that the film's message and core idea is that one should just appreciate what one already has would be a reductive and shallow reading. While writing this script, I had to remember that the film literally ends with Bob and his family suiting up for hero work again. The climax centers on the whole family working together, making use of their unique skills and strengths to defeat the Omnidroid. Clearly, this was about more than merely appreciating what you have. It was about Mr. Incredible learning to be less self-centered, to recognize himself as being a part of a family, and not merely an individual, wrapped up in his individual woes, his individual hopes and longings, who also happens to have a family. Ultimately, he is a much stronger and better person when he allows the people around him to really be a part of his life, and a part of himself, to allow himself to be a part of theirs. And this isn't even mentioning the other explicit themes of self-acceptance and identity. Superpowers in this film serve as an allegory for the traits that make us unique, and the consequences of feeling that these traits must be concealed and repressed, that those qualities which define us and give us color are to be ashamed of.
Right now, honey, the world just wants us to fit in, and to fit in, we just gotta be like everybody else.
But Dad always said our powers were nothing to be ashamed of. Our powers made us special.
Everyone's special, Dash.
Which is another way of saying no one is.
Now, some have read this messaging in elitist terms, even going so far as to call this film Ayn Rand propaganda, and that the film is suggesting some people are just more exceptional and innately gifted than others, and all those ordinary, average plebeians should stop getting in the way of the truly gifted people. I would be lying if I said I didn't initially grapple with some of these more elitist readings while making my original video. There are certainly lines of dialogue that lend legitimacy to this reading.
They keep creating new ways to celebrate mediocrity, but if someone is genuinely exceptional,
This is
then
not about you, Bob. This is about Dash.
You want to do something for Dash? Then let him actually compete. Let him go out for sport.
That everyone can be superheroes. Everyone can be super. And when everyone's super, no one will be.
I also think the use of superpowers as an allegorical device to express a message of self-acceptance can be a bit murky. For one, having superpowers, even in a world where the exercise of such powers has legal ramifications, is almost unequivocally, at least to the outside observer, an advantage. It's not a disability, not a physical oddity or quirk. At all events, there's certainly a strong individualist bent to this film and its messaging. And this is to be expected. This is an American movie after all, and individualism, great man theory, are so deeply embedded in the cultural and ideological superstructure that most writers and artists forged in this atmosphere become unwitting participants in it. This is more or less my reply to those who accuse this film of Randian propaganda. You're watching an American movie. And most of Rand's ideas were, and are even more so today, the dominant values and conventional wisdoms of the day. But if you think this movie, if you think Brad Bird is advocating some kind of right-wing libertarian virtues of rational self-interest, the ethics of self-centeredness and the free market, I don't know, just reevaluate your life choices, man. Quoting from Wikipedia, for brevity's sake, quote, "The essence of objectivist, or Ayn Rand's, ethics is summarized by the oath her Atlas Shrugged character, John Galt, adhered to. Quote, I swear, by my life and my love of it, that I will never live for the sake of another man, nor ask another man to live for mine." Unquote. And then you contrast this with The Incredibles, which is literally about the main character learning to live for others and not for himself. Very Randian. The truth is, in an age where the slogans of "I don't need anyone but myself," "You don't owe anyone anything," are proudly emblazoned on the social fabric as the universal and divine wisdom, and selfishness is extolled as self-care, it can be said with little exaggeration that Ayn Rand has already won. We live in a Randian age, my friends. Besides, so many aspects of The Incredibles practically beg for 100 pretentious video essays with names like The Incredibles and Neoliberalism, The Search for Meaning in the Age of Capitalist Realism, written about it. In so many respects, it's almost a scathing critique of the alienation and emptiness of the corporate world.
Someone broke into their house, Mr. Huff. Their policy clearly covers him against
I don't want to know
any
about their
litigation.
coverage, Bob. Don't tell me about their coverage. Tell me how you're keeping Insuricare in the black. Tell me how that's possible with you writing checks to every Harry Hardluck and Sally sob story that gives you a phone call.
Morning break is over. Morning break is over.
Yet, the film inadvertently depoliticizes its critiques, in redirecting attention back onto the personal and the internal. Bob's alienation and emptiness ultimately amount to a matter of his own choices. It's certainly more substantive than suggesting that he simply needed to be grateful for what he has, but it leaves the impression of a world embroiled with injustice and systemic flaws unaltered. I get the impression that Brad Bird, like so many artists in his shoes, wanted to make this critique, yet struggled to grapple with a satisfying resolution that remains within the bounds of the plausible and practicably achievable. I'll be honest, it's so odd to look back upon how much of the media I consumed growing up had this, be happy with what you have message. Coraline, The Wizard of Oz. Others I definitely know but can't remember right now, etc. It's quite bizarre to me when you really read into it. You know, you ever read into something so much that you realize I probably wasn't supposed to read this much into it? I mean, you have these characters like Coraline who are interfacing with an unhappy, you might even say miserable circumstance, who I guess need to be horribly traumatized by this unfathomably horrifying situation. Like, for just putting it out there, for example, button-eyed doppelgangers of your family who want to literally sew buttons on your eyes and keep your soul trapped in this nightmare dungeon with all the other children who suffered your fate. All of this in order to, I don't know, learn some lesson. You're telling me I went through all this shit and all I got out of it was a fucking life lesson? Well, story of my life. It's almost saying, see the good that comes from wanting things? You see what happens when you think life could be better somewhat? And The Wizard of Oz is a fascinating example to me for a few reasons. When you view the significance in the cultural memory of the hauntingly beautiful Somewhere Over the Rainbow piece. It's worth remembering that this film, released during the Great Depression, Somewhere Over the Rainbow spoke to the real, deep yearning in the hearts of millions for a brighter future past the unending darkness.
That I heard of once in a lullaby.
But then you frame it beside the note the film ends with. If I ever go looking for my heart's desire again, I won't look any further than my own backyard. As the Google AI summary reads, verbatim, quote, she essentially learned that the things she craved were already there, at home, with her loved ones. This message emphasized the importance of appreciating what you have and being content with your surroundings, as the journey to find happiness can often be an internal one. While I don't dream of denying that there is philosophical substance to this, after all, this is one of the pillars of Stoicism, that happiness is possible no matter where one finds himself, I don't think people should feel ashamed or guilty for thinking life could be better, that life could be better for everyone. Well, you know, life could be a lot worse too. Yeah, well, as a wise 6-year-old named Calvin from Calvin and Hobbes once said, life could be a lot fucking better too. Okay, maybe not in so many words, but, you know, I'm speaking from the heart here, alright? I'm about to make such an overdramatic comparison that's gonna sound really fucking stupid given the context of the discussion, but, it's literally the first comparison that comes to mind. It'd be like if the ending to 1984, you know, after Winston Smith is put through literal hell in the Ministry of Love and his mind is broken completely and rebuilt, he's sitting in the Chestnut Tree Cafe and looking at the poster of Big Brother as he sheds a tear of joy in the moment he finally won the personal struggle over himself. He loved Big Brother. Was portrayed as a happy end. If this was portrayed as a happy ending, I don't know. I really think this notion of appreciate what you have is so internalized in most American and Western minds that it's become just conventional wisdom and common sense. It's taken for granted that this is the mature and philosophically wise and sensible view to have. Oh, even this other places have it worse sentiment. It seems to me implicitly assumes that nothing is going to change for anyone else either. You know, you're not only denying yourself, but just the rest of the suffering masses of any agency. The peoples of the Third World are but suffering tokens, unable to help themselves. In reality, the peoples of the Third World are the ones organizing massive strikes, like the Bangladesh garment workers, facing deadly repression, like trade unionists in the Philippines, engaging in mass organizing, strikes, and political movements that challenge corporate power. Who's to say that those people in, say, the Philippines won't one day take the world by surprise and overthrow the US-aligned, corporate-friendly government and send the first major pang in the world political arena? You have the stuff going on in Burkina Faso, which I'm not super well versed in, but from my understanding, they have ousted the French puppet government and are currently putting certain key industries under state ownership, building infrastructure, and sketching the outlines of social welfare, just taking control of the natural resources into their own hands. Or hell, rewind a bit to the Arab Spring movements. Although they ultimately failed and led to reactionary governments taking hold, they still demonstrate the fluid, changing nature of politics. You know, how nothing is static or permanent, and that the Arab states actually have a left which nearly acquired power. They aren't merely a homogenous collective of far-right Islamicists. The fact remains, ultimately, the US runs the global arena. we aren't simply another country coexisting among others, but rather at the very top of a global system we run. And our relationship, most of the Western world's relationship to the Third World, is of a extractive nature. If anyone has the power to change or at least influence the world political scene, it's the peoples of America. And none of this alters my high opinion of The Incredibles in the least, because although I have reservations with its ultimate framing of and answers to the problems it critiques, the way it presents those problems, how it paints the emptiness and drabness of the day-to-day drudgery, the feelings of despondent longing for the past and for something better around the corner, some of the realest, most human shit I've yet seen in an animated film, or in most films, to be honest. It continues to resonate and strike a chord in how pointed and honest it is about these things. Something, thoughtful conclusion.